Today we're talking about a technique that originated on this instrument, the didgeridoo, and it's circular breathing. It's extremely useful for pretty much any horn player. A lot of winds players, flutes can't do it, but if you're one of those, this technique will totally work for you. So, all right, without further ado, we'll get right into it. So, when you first hear someone talk about circular breathing, sometimes they describe it in a way that makes it seem a lot more difficult than it is. They generally say that circular breathing is the act of exhaling out of your mouth and in your nose at the same exact time. Well, under that explanation, if you've ever tried it, it probably looks something like this. And you realize it's quite silly and it's impossible to do because that explanation is not what you're actually doing. Exhaling is using the lungs to do a motion. What you're actually doing is expelling captured air from the cheeks and the oral cavity out of your mouth, and then you're inhaling in your nose at the same exact time. That makes it sound, okay, now we're getting to something a little more possible because it gives us all the details. What we need to do to circular breathe is first capture air. If you can make chipmunk cheeks, you can circular breathe. Guaranteed, no questions asked. That's the first step. Make chipmunk cheeks. Now we have all this captured air in our entire oral cavity. The next step is to expel it using only the cheeks, not the lungs, okay? You should be holding your breath while doing this. Capture the air in your cheeks and then squeeze your cheeks in towards your teeth. Open your mouth a little bit and let the air come out. And try to make this silly noise for now. It'll work best. And you'll notice I ran out of air. If you're using your lungs, you'll be able to do this for a really long time because the aperture of your mouth is really tiny. Instead, use up all that air stored in your cheeks. And that is the first step of circular breathing. Now, if you can do that, good job. You're well on your way. If you can't, I would guess that you're using your lungs. Okay? So stop using your lungs. And this is circular breathing is kind of a weird thing because it makes you think about your body in a weird way. You're thinking about your breathing, which is something you normally don't have to think about. And then you're also thinking about using the cheeks. And we're not even talking about the saxophone yet, right? Once you get that, now that's going to be a whole nother thought process. But for now, just really focus on shut your lungs off and just squeeze the air out of your cheeks. Okay, now we'll move on. The next thing is to inhale while squeezing the air out of our cheeks. So we'll make the chipmunk cheeks again, squeeze our cheeks in, squirt that air out, and inhale in our nose. And I'll try to do this loud enough to where you can hear me, but I normally don't do it this loud. Now I have too much air. All right, so again. All right, so give that a go. And if you can do that, there's only really, a couple more steps before you actually know how to circular breathe. Doing it on the horn, that's going to be a process we'll talk about in a little bit here. But right now, we're just trying to get the motion down. Give it a go. And go ahead and pause the video. And if you can do it, then we'll move on to the next step. And if you still can't do it, again, it's probably because you're using your lungs to push the air out of your mouth. Really make sure not to do that. The next step is going to be to exhale with our lungs out of our mouth and then catch air in our cheeks and switch to the circular breathing and then switch back to a regular lung exhale. Catching the air is really easy. Just puff your cheeks out. And if I close my mouth, right, I have all that air captured. But if I have a tight little embouchure, that's all I have. It's just a little bit of air left in my mouth. So instead, really puff those cheeks out, get that oral cavity to fill. And there I'm using my lungs, of course. And then we want to switch to using the cheeks out and inhale in the nose. And just real quick, I'll use my hand to show you, which way my lungs are going. So either expelling out or inhaling in. So give that a go. If you can do that, you're good to move on to the next step. If you can't, just take it slow. There's no need to learn how to circular breathe in 5 minutes, okay? If you can, though, the next step we'll move to is using a plastic straw. And you know what? If you have a metal straw or any kind of straw, it'll work. The reason why we're going to use a straw here is because a super important thing with circular breathing is you want to leave no distinguishable difference between the exhale and then the cheek pushing out the air. You don't want it to be real obvious that you're doing it. Now, I will say there's always going to be a difference in your air pressure and your air column and everything. When you are using your cheeks versus your lungs, you just can't work around that. But what our job should be as saxophonists is to try to make the sound as indiscernible as humanly possible. And I mean, even the pros, the best guys in the world, are going to have issues with this. So don't worry. But what we want to do with the straw and a cup of water is to try to get this sound as similar as possible. And so the straw is great because we're going to blow bubbles in the water. But it gives us a visual representation of the air that we're expelling out and how that pressure and the force and everything, looks. Because if you exhale harder, there's going to be a bigger jet of bubbles coming out. And if you exhale not as hard, then the bubbles will decrease. Or possibly even stop. That's a common problem with circular breathing is sometimes people actually are stopping the air even though they're doing the circular breathing motion because they aren't forcing out enough air to keep the reed vibrating. These are all things that we can fix by just this simple exercise. So first thing is, again, if you have a rigid straw, you won't be able to do this. But with a regular plastic straw, go ahead and twist the end. Just a little bit, okay? So what we want to do here is we're creating back pressure. Back pressure is when we're forcing air through something with our lungs, it automatically pushes back on us with some amount of force. It's a restriction, basically. And so back pressure is circular breathing, that's your friend. Whereas a very open thing that's very easy to blow air through, that's not as good. Because then, right, we just blow all our air out. We've increased our back pressure here. And you know what? If you're using a rigid straw, the reason why this still works is because it's already a very tight aperture, so it already has a pretty high back pressure. Now, we'll simply place this in the water and try to keep your lung exhale as constant as possible. All right, so that works great. But now we want to do the exercise that we just did without the straw. Blow out. Switch to using your cheeks and inhaling in your nose, so do a circular breath, and then switch back. And when we're doing this, we can even hear the bubbles. If the volume of the bubbles decreases or increases, that means that we made a huge change. We want to keep this as constant as possible. There we go. I think that I did a pretty good job there keeping it consistent, but again, I'm not perfect at this. And you shouldn't be after a day. This is something that you're going to need to work into your practice routine. Definitely. Work with that for a little bit before moving to the sax. I would say get that down and do it a couple times during the day just to get used to that physical feeling of understanding what your lungs are doing, understanding what your mouth's doing, all of that. Now we'll move on to the sax and how to do it there. Okay, guys. So now that we've made it to the stage of doing it on the sax, there's something that I have to bring up that you may have already thought of. So some teacher or your parents or your brother, someone at some point may have told you, you are not supposed to puff out your cheeks when playing the saxophone. And they're right. Okay? They are. But if you want to circular breathe, there's no other way. Unless you can somehow make your, this part of your mouth puff out more or something. There's really no way to do it, and it is going to compromise your embouchure. And actually, if you circular breathe for a really long time, you're going to notice your embouchure getting more sore than usual. This is just par for the course. Doing this excessively in one run can certainly make your embouchure start to fail. So, I don't suggest doing it a crazy amount. However, exercise caution and do this just when you need it. For you classical musicians, you may see parts that are written out that have just long durations of notes. This will be useful for you there, but don't try to do it throughout an entire song. The composer probably doesn't want you to do that, and therefore you probably don't want to do that. So I advise that whenever you're going to use circular breathing, instead of trying to make it a show-off thing, don't show off by circular breathing, okay? It's a technique that a lot of people can do. It's just a useful tool. But instead, make sure it's musical. Ask your instructor. Ask your teacher. Ask your parents. Ask someone who is part of your music-making process, should I circular breathe during this section? Is it okay if I do? Because sometimes the composer wanted it to be long-held notes, but they just wrote in the breath marks because they didn't think that a lot of saxophonists would know how to circular breathe. Always ask these questions. Now, we're going to move to playing on the saxophone. The first thing that we're going to play is a C-sharp 1, or D-flat, if you prefer. It's just all open. I'll go ahead and put the fingering charts up of the notes that I'm playing. This is just a good note to start on. What we're going to do is take a good breath before you play, exhale, and let's get 2 circular breaths in. What you want to do is only take the breath when your air reserve is about half. This is going to take a lot of experimentation to figure out when that is. For me, it's not going to be the same for you because we each have different lungs, we have different bodies. I've been playing saxophone quite a while. Maybe you run marathons, so your lungs are awesome. You can even expand your air tank reserves through simply doing breathing exercises or holding your breath for a really long time. That can increase your air reserves. When you do it, it's going to be up to you. Exercise caution and practice this. Figure out where about half is for you. The reason why is we don't want to get to the bottom of our air tanks because then you're trying to take a bunch of breaths in a row to refill your air. And that's bad because you start freaking out. Embouchure just completely goes away. And like I said before, you may actually stop playing a note anyways. So it's all for naught. Don't do it when your air is not low enough because having too much breath, it can be a really big problem too. It feels really uncomfortable and you start to freak out there. The difference is there's a way to fix the latter, the second one, where you can let air escape from the side of your mouth, or if you're really understanding your body, you can actually exhale out of your mouth and your nose at the same time. Both of these techniques can get rid of air quickly to get you back to that comfortable point. If you are too low on air, there's really only one way to get it, and that's by taking a bunch of breaths. And sometimes you may see professionals. I've seen Joshua Redman, right? He circular breathes. I've seen him just going. This is not great because A, your note's probably going to cut off, and B, you might freak out and take in too much air, and then you have the second problem to deal with. So dealing with both at the same time is not great. And what you're playing is probably just going to go out the window because you can't focus on that. You're just focused on getting breaths. Okay. All of that out of the way, we'll just hit C sharp. And like I said, take 2 circular breaths in. Okay, so a couple things to talk about there. You definitely noticed my airstream changed when I took the breaths. The first time the note got weaker. The second time the intonation wavered a little bit. And it got a little weaker. Those are things that I need to work on. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm just showing you what I know. We want to try to limit that. I will say, though, when holding out a singular note, that's really where you're going to be weakest. That's where it's going to show through. If you're doing a fast, repetitive thing, then it won't show through as much because the notes are moving so quickly, people aren't going to hear those minor fluctuations. Even if it gets a little quieter, they're not going to question it and be like, what's that guy doing? That's a good note to do, just to start off. If you would want to start on a G or any of the mid-range notes, those are all going to be pretty good. The next note that we're going to move to is I want to work on middle of the horn, and then we'll go to bottom of the horn, and then upper range of the horn. Not altissimo, just upper range. I'm going to go to a B flat one, which is the lowest note for conventional saxophones. Varies, you have a low A, and some weird models of altos and tenors have low A's, but it's fairly rare. Fingering chart will be over there. Here we go. And if you can't play a B flat one, no problem. Just play as low as you can. Maybe D1 or E1. Okay? So same thing here. We're going to take 2 breaths. Again, we had those fluctuations. It got a little quieter. The main thing that I want you to focus on when doing these long tones with circular breathing is you want to keep your embouchure as same as possible. This is really hard because you're puffing your cheeks out. You're not used to that, right? You're used to playing nice and tight. Since you're puffing those cheeks out, it's trying to pull all these muscles in an embouchure that doesn't work well. Just really focus on trying to keep that embouchure tight. And like I said, you may get sore. Now we're going to head up to the higher range of the sax. Let's just go to D3. Just your palm, an octave. So yet again, we had volume fluctuations and a little pitchy. That's going to be expected because in the upper range, our lip is going to tend to loosen up when we're doing the circular breathing, and we may dip a little flat. I don't necessarily think that you're going to run into a situation where you just want to hold a D3 for 5 minutes long. That would be very odd to have written in music or to even want to do during a solo. Work on these and work on the entire range of your horn. This will make you understand your embouchure more, and this will make you understand what you need to do when circular breathing to try to keep that embouchure as same as possible. That leads us to the next one. The next exercise we're going to do is we're just going to do a simple scale. We're going to do G7. We're going to go through this enough times to where we need to take 2 breaths again. You're going to notice with moving notes, you might not hear it as much, or you might not care as much about the change in noise. I took 3 breaths just to make it back to the 1. If you've been able to do all of this, hey, guess what? You know how to circular breathe. Now it's just to work on implementing it. I'm going to bring up a few examples that I enjoy myself of circular breathing. The first one is going to be Rahsaan Roland Kirk. If you don't know Rahsaan Roland Kirk, you have some homework to do. This guy was crazy, completely blind, made his own instruments. They were some weird versions of saxophone. Sometimes he didn't even play on that. Sometimes he would play on a recorder with his nose while singing at the same time, or even on these things that he called black mystery pipes, which were basically garden hoses. But anyways, this guy was the circular breathing champ, okay? Kenny G, sure, you have the world record for playing a note for 45 minutes or whatever. No. Rahsaan Roland Kirk used to play entire gigs, 4 hours long, circular breathing the entire time, never stopped. And he's not holding one note, which is super lame and boring. He's playing entire songs and entire solos, never stop circular breathing. Sometimes even circular breathing while playing multiple saxes. Okay, this is insane. In the description below the video, I'm going to put a link to Volunteered Slavery by Rahsaan Roland Kirk. This recording's interesting. He sometimes loses track of the microphone and other things. But if you listen to the entire video, you're going to see some decent examples of circular breathing. The next one is going to be James Carter, who is a saxophone giant, just crazy on the sax. He's circular breathing on the Oscar Pettiford tune, Tricotism. He exercises this beautifully, doing something that I encourage all of you to do. He's not just repeating one simple idea. He's doing something rather complex while circular breathing, and ends on a huge peak. I suggest you give that a listen, and I have the timestamp for that one listed out. The last one is actually not a saxophone player. I would regret not bringing this one up. It's the first time that I heard circular breathing in middle school. It's a recording of Wynton Marsalis playing Moto Perpetuo by Paganini, which is a violin tune. He's playing it on trumpet and circular breathing the entire time, which is amazing. His sound is nearly flawless throughout. It's executed nearly perfectly. When circular breathing, there's a lot of different ways you can use it. My main suggestions are it's great for repetitive ideas. If you just want to do a triplet over and over and maybe with minor fluctuations, it's awesome for that. Or if you want to, let's say you do want to hold out a note for effect. Well, it's perfect for that. Or if you hit a held note after a long run, right? You're already low on air reserves. Awesome. You can hold that note out and really elongate your peak of your solo. Another example that I would suggest is try taking licks from instruments that are not winds. Try taking a lick from a keyboardist that's real extended and long, or try taking a lick from a guitarist. That would be a great way to exercise circular breathing. You can also stream together licks. Take a bunch of the licks that you know, and you may be able to make one super lick block. We've made it through. This has been the circular breathing tutorial. I want to thank you very much for checking this out. If you did like this video, I'm going to start making more of these fairly regularly, once a week or every 2 weeks. So please, if you did like it, give me a like and a subscribe. All right. Thank you very much, and happy practicing.